Good morning, good morning. It is Friday the 5th of January 2024. Welcome, welcome. It's so satisfying when a year starts on a Monday. So, hello to everyone in the chat. Today we're going to talk a little bit at the start, we might move on to other things, about elections. Not the election that's just happened in Bangladesh, which a lot of people have said was absolutely pointless because the opposition didn't stand. No, we're going to be talking about the election here in the UK that we are having at some point this year, apparently, although it could be at any point up till January the 28th next year, which I don't think that's going to happen. But you know, you never know. You never know. I don't know why my printer has just come to life. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Anyway, so yesterday, Rishi Sunak said he was working on the assumption that he will hold a general election in the second half of the year. Now, this is quite cool because, it means that we've got more time to prepare for the absolute annihilation of the Tory party. But also, it's very shit because it means that we have to spend more time. This means we have to spend more time with the Tories in power. He says that he has things that he wants to do. Yeah, I know, Rishi. You've got things you want to do. Well, you've got one thing you want to do, which is forced through the UK-India trade deal, which is going to be really bad for workers in India. It's going to be really bad for businesses in the UK. It's going to be bad for pretty much everyone apart from you and President Modi of India. Now, there's going to be Indian elections, or rather elections in India later this year. So I think that they may well be holding out till after those elections because they want to get this trade deal through. And maybe this is the only way that they can get it through in time, because if someone else takes over from Modi's BJP party in India, that's going to be a bit of a problem for Rishi Sunak, because the person who replaces Modi might not be such a right-wing tyrannical scumbag who doesn't care about things like, sweatshops, his own citizens suffering, and the rest of it. Anyway, so obviously accusations have flown towards from Keir Starmer and from Ed Davey, leaders of Labour and the Liberal Democrats, respectively, calling Rishi Sunak a squatter. There you go, he's a squatter. Keir Starmer accused him of squatting in Downing Street for months on end, dithering and delaying while the country wants change. Brilliant wording to use there from Keir Starmer. He's upped his game in the last few months. I've really got to say, Keir Starmer has upped his game in the last few months. And we're going to talk a bit about what he's been saying this morning on the radio. I think he was on the Nick Ferrari show this morning on LBC, and he has talked about assisted dying and the fact that Labour are open to a discussion on that, which is fantastic. And also, he's talked about what was it? The Green Pledge, the 28 billion Green Pledge, which he is going to fulfill once Labour are in office. They are still aiming for net zero by 2030, which is an ambitious target. And you know what? If Labour do this, it will change everything. Not just for us in this country, but it will change the world. Because in order to get to 2030 and get to net zero, the amount of investment that needs to be done and the amount in infrastructure, the Tories have failed again. Do you want to know what they failed at this today? Because it's 365 days a year, and they managed to fail on all of them. It's 366 days this year. Hopefully, they won't be in for all of them. They failed to install enough electric chargers for electric cars on motorways, in service stations on motorways. Well done. They've missed their target massively because Tories don't care. They're not getting backhanders from the electric car companies or from the electric companies that are using solar or wind turbines. Wind turbines that are famously banned in this country. Wind turbines are banned on land in this country by the Tories and have been for nearly 10 years now. They've been banned. Now, I mean, you just got to rub your eyes and go, sorry, what? We're in the middle of a climate crisis. Yeah. And what the Tories have done, well, they've given out loads of oil contracts to these oil companies in the North Sea and allowed the drilling into the Rosebank, the Rosebank, what's it called? Puddle. Which means that millions of tons of CO2 is going to get pumped into the atmosphere as a direct result of the Tories. And they say, it's for energy security, which is bullshit. And we've got to call this out every time we hear it. It's energy security. They allow, because people like Laura Kunsberg all went to school with the same people who run the Tory party, she will never say to them, hang on, what? How does it give us energy security? But then you get people like Victoria Derbyshire, who's not particularly posh, didn't go to a posh school, and she actually questions them and says, hang on, what are you talking about? Why are you saying that it's going to bring in energy security when the energy companies themselves, the oil companies themselves, the petrochemical companies themselves, have said that they're not going to give a preferential rate to the UK, that we're going to have to buy the oil that's drilled out of our area of the sea. We're going to have to pay just as much as everyone else. We have to pay the going rate. And that's the great deal that the Tories have done for us. Because Tories are born rich. They don't know anything about great deals. They don't know what a bargain is. You know, they go into TK Maxx and buy a coat or something. They go, oh, got a bargain. They have no understanding of. There was an old line, wasn't there, about the cynics. They knew the price of everything but the value of nothing. The Tories don't know the price of anything, and they don't know the value of anything. They don't know the worth of anything because they're worthless scum. I'm sorry, but they keep proving me right again and again and again. So I'm not gonna dial back on that position. Meanwhile, the SNP Westminster leader of the SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn accused Sunak of he's shown a little bit of cowardice and trying to run back into the autumn by deferring the election, which we thought might be in May. Meanwhile, the Green Party co-leader Carla Denyer said she didn't want the Tories to get one more day to screw up the country, which fits in quite well with what I was just saying about like every day they screw this country a little bit more. The economy, say it with me, hasn't grown for 16 years. Look it up. 1997 to 2007, our economy doubled from around $1.5 trillion to $3 trillion. Last year, our economy was $3 trillion. It's like this. You can plot it on a graph and it goes like that. I know it goes up and down a little bit along there, but actually it doesn't go above 3 trillion much. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a dip. It gets back up to 3 trillion, then it dips, and then it gets back up to 3 trillion. And they measure it in UK pounds sometimes. That's what the Tories do. They go, look at the economy measured in UK pounds. Yeah, because the pounds are worth less than they used to be. Look at how much a pint of beer is now. It's £5.50 in a pub. In Durham, it's £5.50. For Christ's sake, when I was young, it was like £2, if that. And that was only in the 90s. You know, things could only get better in the 90s. Things couldn't get any worse now. So, opposition parties like Labour and Lib Dems and the SNP have been talking up the idea of a May election to force Sunak into this, where he looks cowardly. He looks like he's scared, which is never good. Although, note that Sunak used the term working assumption, so he can always dial back on it and say, well, you know, I didn't say it would actually do it. I just said it was a working assumption. There's generally speaking, elections are held in May or June. Since 1945, 11 of our elections have been held in May or June. There's been none held in August or September because, you know, politicians want their holidays. There's been 4 held in October, which looks most likely for the next election we've got. And then we've had 1 that was held in December. Like, only a madman would agree to a December election when you are so far behind in the polls. I'll just say that again. No, I don't need to say it again. I think you've all got that message. So, Mr. Sunak raised the prospect of further tax cuts after the easing of national insurance on the 6th of January. Yay, I've got 1 penny off my national insurance. That's going to help pay for my insanely expensive energy bills that are running to over £400 a month now. £400 a month. Tory Britain. I think when I was living in Liverpool, in my flat in Liverpool, I think my energy bills were £400 a year. A year. That was about 20 years ago. A year. And now that's a month. So what? It's gone up 12 times. Brilliant. I know we don't use as much electricity in the winter, but still, or the energy bill, I should say. In the summer. We don't use as much energy in the summer, but my God, these Tories are absolutely screwing us. And the price of everything's gone up. And people go, oh, look, I've got a penny back on my national insurance. Yay. No one's going to care. No one's going to care. It's painful. Anyway, so when I was fighting against Brexit, I had a website called projecthope.eu. And the idea was that we would we organised stuff, we put out stuff that was positive about the EU. It wasn't just negative about Brexit, saying, oh, these terrible things that Brexit is going to do. We actually put out a positive case for the EU, which is something that I felt that people weren't doing enough. In the same way that we don't do this enough for migrants in this country. We need migrants. Migrants are great. We want as many migrants as possible. Bring them on. Bring as many migrants here as we can fit into our country, because we have an aging population. And unless we start having lots of babies, which is very unlikely because it's too expensive these days, we need people from other countries to come here and work with us. Not for us, but with us. And so in the same way, we didn't really push the positive case of the EU like Femi does. If you talk to Femi about the EU and why it's a good idea, he will give you down the banks, especially about the single market, about why you need a single market in any kind of cluster of small countries that all are on each other's doorsteps. Having regulatory alignment on products and services makes so much sense. It actually makes me wince a little bit of how much sense it makes. Anyway, so I called my thing Project Hope. I still have projecthope.eu if you ever want to check out that website. I haven't updated it for a very long time. However, Labour, independently of me, obviously, are calling what they want to do running up to the election, or what they want to do once they're elected. They're calling it Project Hope for a downtrodden Britain. Thanks. The check's in the post, I'm sure. Super chats are open, by the way. Right, okay, so I'm going to jump into the chat now. Loads to talk about this morning, as always. I mean, Parliament's not even back, is it? It's not back till next week. £5.50 a pint in Durham. It is currently £200 a month for me. That's for Steve's Retro Loft, talking about energy bills. Lewis Goodall predicts November 14th or 21st for the election. Well, that'd be interesting. That'd be the first ever November election. I don't want an election in November because it's cold, it's wet, it's damp, it's dark. I don't want to be knocking on people's doors asking them to vote Labour in the middle of winter. It's ridiculous. The Tories know this. I mean, I guess the only hope is that lots of people don't turn out to vote for Labour or something. Or events, my dear, events, which is the idea that something might happen, something might come up between now and November that, like a war that makes Rishi Sunak incredibly popular. It doesn't always work going on daft military adventures in other countries. Just ask Tony Blair, although they did win in 2005. But that's more to do with the fact that the Conservative opposition was in pretty much disarray and the leader was desperately unpopular. But also you've got George W. Bush Sr., not Junior, but Senior, who went into Iraq, went into Kuwait and then a little bit into Iraq, which wasn't that bad an idea, except for the fact that it kind of lost him the election because going on a daft military adventure in another country doesn't always win the day. But he learned that the hard way. Anyway, so moving on, we've got 31 Blaze saying politicians of all stripes have avoided making the point that immigrants are a positive. They need to do better because they all know we need them. Yeah. Well, it's like minorities being here, making things more accessible for disabled people, and embracing people who are of different sexualities, transgender people who come from different walks of life, people with different religions, even like it's a net good, and I think that should be always the idea, that instead of trying to scare people into voting, which is a Tory thing to do, because Tory voters are always terrified of a bunch of clucking chickens. I say clucking, who something happens and they're like, hiding in the corner, going, oh my god, the boogeyman's coming. It's Jeremy Corbyn. It's the EU. It's the woke blob. And it's all about fear and fear and fear. And every time you read the newspaper headlines on the right wing press, it's always something to do with why you should be scared of this or why you should hate this. And I'm putting forward a positive case for having, a plurality of ideas and plurality of people, of different walks of life. Why not? Why not make the positive case for that? Look at the positive case for immigration. It has, when we were part of the EU in 2004, There was the big boom, wasn't there, when there was 10 countries that came in as part of the EU. And we could have capped the numbers coming in from Romania and Bulgaria. That option was there for us, and we never took it. Do you know why? Because it was good for the economy. Immigration is good for the economy, but also it's good for the soul of the country. It's a lot harder to be racist or xenophobic when your best mate is from another country and has a different skin color. It's a lot harder to be homophobic when one of your daughters, sons, grandsons is gay. It's a lot harder to be transphobic when you actually know someone who is trans who's absolutely lovely. And like, why would you hate those people? Like, why would you? You just wouldn't. And that's something that I found when I was traveling around the world. There's a great line, I think it was by Mark Twain, and he said, travel is fatal to prejudice. I'm probably butchering that quote, but it's something along those lines. And it's absolutely true. Because if you've got mates in every country in the world, how can you be prejudiced against that country? I mean, I'm not happy with what Israel is doing right now by any stretch of the imagination. I hate the regime in Iran. There are a lot of countries out there. Venezuela, oh my God, that voted just now to invade their bloody neighbor, Guyana. But I met such lovely people in those countries who were just the nicest people. And I can't blame them all for the actions of their government. And so I can't sit here and go, oh, Israel's doing this. Even Russia. I struggle with Russia. I have friends in Russia right now. But like the fact that leader, Putin, has done such a horrible thing and invaded Ukraine. And he did other things as well. Like he also invaded Georgia and in the Caucasus, and he took away South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Abkhazia now where they're building a big Soviet military base. Sorry, Russian military base. But once you know some people from that country, it's almost impossible to go, all Russians are bad. Because at least you know one that isn't. And so, yeah, bring it on. Bring on people from different backgrounds. It's not scary once you get to talking to them. And, they're fine, as most humans are. Most humans are nice. Most humans just want to be loved. There's just a few mustache-twirling psychopaths out there who you'd want to avoid, but they're all in power. They're all in the Tory party. They're easy to spot. So, making the positive case for immigration is something that I wish Labour would get onto. I'm not going to sit here and criticise Labour too much, but them jumping on the Tory bandwagon of, we need to control immigration. No. We need to explain to people why immigration is a good thing. And why, quite simply, my dad's been on palliative care now for 3 years. And he has carers coming 4 times a day. And they're never British. They're always from Nigeria or India or Bangladesh or Pakistan or from somewhere else in West Africa. They're never from Britain. And I just think that if we didn't have immigration, if we didn't have people coming from other countries, there will be no one to look after my dad. Except my mum. And I think she'll struggle with that considering she's in her mid-70s. She's not going to like me saying that. Hi, Mum. It is just... It's something that we need to address, something that we need to look at. If they are going to brand their campaign as Project Hope, which I hope they do because it's a great name, I hope that they bring forward some of the positive arguments for not just immigration, but also the NHS, public transport. Public transport. For every £1 you spend on public transport, you get £10 back in investment, in growth, to the economy. This is why countries like Luxembourg have made public transport free. You've got countries like Estonia, where in the capital, Tallinn, they have a free public transport. In France and Germany and Italy, the public transport is subsidised and cheap as chips, and as it should be. It's just the UK where we don't have public transport anymore. We have private transport. It's all owned by the publicly owned bodies in France and Germany and Netherlands, which is a weird way to run things, but there you go. We don't like nationalisation. Everything must be run by private companies. Okay, how about this company that's actually the French state train service, SNCF, or in America, in Germany, Deutsche Bahn. Yeah, let's get them on board. Okay, and what we can do is we can make our bus fares and our train fares really, really expensive. Bus just going past. Make our train fares and bus fares really expensive, right? And then what we can do is we can actually use that money to subsidise rail travel in France and Germany and Holland and Spain and Italy. Meanwhile, Spain has been quietly making the second biggest high-speed rail network in the world after China. And China's a lot bigger than Spain. And they've done it, without much fanfare, but they've done it really well. Like, that is something that we can learn from. And I think we should be putting more train lines in. They don't necessarily have to be high-speed train lines. We're not that big a country. But we need to be looking at this. Now, the Tories were never really sold on HS2. They thought, okay, let's do this. It'll be all right. But I think they just saw it as jobs for the boys. Look at how much money Tories have made out of HS2. And we're going to have a railway to nowhere. We're going to have a railway that goes from Old Oak Common in London to, which is like, if you get off the train there and go to central London and get the train to Euston, you negate any kind of gain that you got from the train being fast from Birmingham. Yeah. Painful. Anyway, my mum is watching. Hi, mum. Scott is saying, I think the case for immigration needs to be made by us, not Labour. Realistically, a lot of Labour voters are not as positive on it as we are. PR would definitely help too. Yeah, Scott, again, making the positive case. Haven't Labour backed away from recently from nationalising public transport? Well, Salavi the cat, what the line is that when the contracts run out, then they will look at they'll basically take the contracts in for themselves. But the Tories have done some devious things, like the contract for, say, the Avanti West Coast contract, which used to be held by Virgin Trains for many years. Now it's Avanti, who don't really have a great record. They run the trains up the West Coast main line from London up through Crewe to Liverpool, Manchester, etc., and then up north. They are they've been given a contract for like 8 years. 8 years. So if Labour are waiting for these contracts to run out so they can take them back into public ownership, like LNER has been taken back into public ownership. I think was it Southwestern Trains been taken? Someone correct me in the chat there. And I know that TransPennine Express and Northern have been taken into public ownership. They'll just continue doing that until all the train companies are under public ownership, which would make a lot more sense. And hopefully they could bring them all under one umbrella of drivers and staff and people working on the trains can sign one contract with National Rail, or let's call it British Rail, with British Rail, and then they can work on any of the trains that they know how to operate or the routes that they know that they can go down. Right, anyway, making a positive case for public transport, making a positive case for immigration, making a positive case for multiculturalism. Let's talk about culture. I mean, British culture, English culture is a bit crap. I'm sorry, but it is. Like, in Wales, they have their own language. In Scotland, they have their own language, and also a really strong culture with the tartan and the kilts. And I don't want to be patronising to anyone who's Scottish watching this and think, "Oh, piss off, you English bastard." But they have a really, really strong identity in Scotland and Wales. England doesn't have that great identity. I identify more coming from Liverpool with someone from Wales or Scotland or Ireland than I do with someone from Kent. In fact, I can guarantee that 9 times out of 10, my political opinion and the way I talk and the things that I find funny and the people I like to get on with probably going to come more likely from, near me in Liverpool than all the way down in Kent. I just, they all vote Tory down there. Not everyone. Hashtag not all Kentians. What's someone from Kent called? Not all Kentish people. Is that even a thing? But yeah, I think that England as a culture has been enriched so much by people coming from other countries and opening restaurants and having their own culture, religion, holy days, teaching us about the world without us actually having to go anywhere. I mean, think about where would we be without Chinatown in Liverpool is one of the oldest Chinatowns in Europe. I think it's the oldest Chinatown in Europe. It's not made it so like Liverpool doesn't have its own identity anymore because it's got a Chinatown and literally has for hundreds of years. That's not the case. It's like that could be incorporated into the family of Liverpool. And there's a great line that someone said, I think it was probably Nicola Sturgeon or someone up in Scotland, where they said, if you live in Scotland, you are Scottish. That's it. Doesn't matter where you come from, what colour you are, what accent you've got, or what your religion is, or no religion. You're Scottish. You live in Scotland. You're Scottish. And I like that attitude. And that's something that I think that we should be making more of a positive case for. Definitely. Nice try, Graham, but that's not what Rachel Reeves actually said. You're translating her words. Well, I don't actually know the exact thing that Rachel Reeves has said about this, but if they are dialing back the idea of nationalising the railways, I didn't know that. I thought they were just waiting for the contracts to run out and then they'll take them into national ownership with the trains anyway. With the buses, the TfL model is being rolled out across the country by regional mayors, like Andy Burnham has made the TfL model standard now in uh, in Manchester with this re-regulation, because deregulation is what caused the bus services to go insane and to suddenly get really, really expensive. And I think that that's going to be followed up in Liverpool as well, in the Liverpool metropolitan area as well, by Steve Rotherham. So as far as I'm aware, and I might be wrong, I think that's the direction that Labour are trying to go in. But maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're just all like, yeah, let's privatise everything because it makes everything work so much better. I'd like to see a conversation between Julia Patterson, who wrote Critical, the book about the NHS and encroaching privatisation on the NHS, and Wes Streeting, to find out, what Labour actually are planning. They've talked a lot about using things like AI in medicine and streamlining the tech services of the NHS on that side of things. But I'm just hoping that Labour will actually pay doctors what they should have. I mean, we're in the middle of a 6-day walkout now from young doctors. Young doctors, sorry. that was a Australian soap opera, wasn't it? Oh no, that was the Flying Doctors. The Young and the Restless, no, the Bold and the Beautiful. Junior doctors are on strike at the moment for 6 days, and it's because their pay has gone down 25% in real terms. 25%. So I'm hoping that Labour will actually sort that out. But do you know what really helps in all this? When we need Labour to get in, don't we? Well, at least we need the Tories out. When Labour do come to power, if they come to power, touch wood, we need to be there saying this stuff. We need to be saying we need more immigrants. We need the railways to be nationalised effectively. However long that takes, we've got to do that. I think Labour maybe looked at it and gone, it's too expensive to try and break the contracts. But you know what? The train operating companies are so crap in this country that what Labour can do a bit sneakily is just say, well, we're going to dial back on those old subsidies that we're giving you. So good luck with that. And then those companies are just going to fail, like LNER failed and like TransPennine Express failed. TransPennine Express, worst trains ever. I mean, I've been on some dicey trains. I've been on trains in Morocco. I've been on trains in West Africa. I've been in Tunisia. Where have I taken trains? All over India. So all over Sri Lanka. I've taken a lot of trains in my life. I've taken a train across from Kazakhstan into Uzbekistan. I've never been on a train as bad as the TransPennine Express from Liverpool to Durham, and I'll tell you why. Every train I've ever been on, it's not a commuter train, an actual, city to city train, has had a toilet. It might have just been a hole in the ground, in the floor of the. It might have been not just a hole in the floor of the carriage, but at least they had a toilet. I've been on trains coming from Liverpool to Durham, a 3-hour journey, and there's been no operating toilets on the train, if you can believe that. So yeah, it's back in government hands now. So there you go. Oh, it's 10 o'clock already. Wow, that went quick. Don't forget Basildon culture. Well, yeah, Kentians are called KUNTs, aren't they? Yeah, well, KUNT and the gang are quite famous people from Basildon. Free bus service in Manchester, city service is great. There you go. And Southeastern, I think, was the train service that I was looking at. Did I say Southwestern? Cocked up there. Should we just have a very, very, very quick look at the papers? This won't take long because they've all got the same headline. Here we go. We've got an advert for glasses. There you go. We've got the Times there. Doctors told the NHS belongs to all of us, not just you. Obviously, the Times Murdoch rag being on the side of the government and all this. Doctors should be paid less, and they're trying to demonise doctors because that's what Rupert Murdoch, the horrible man who owns those papers, once used to think. But most of them are covering this. The Daily Mail here about Prince Andrew, no way back. And then, there are some different things here, actually. I thought it was all just about Prince Andrew. Rishi's tax cut pledge kicks off election battle. Rishi, why they call him Rishi? His name is Sunak. It should say Sunak, but obviously the Express is so far up the arse of the Tory party, it can see the future. And the star there, Operation Oompa Loompa, which is calls for an emergency set of things to do if this lunatic becomes president again. And then the Mirror, cops must probe Andrew sex claims. Andrew in orgy on Epstein Island. This has come out in the Epstein papers. The first batch of Epstein papers were a little bit like, oh, there's nothing in here. But then a second batch came out yesterday, and there was a lot more in there. And apparently there's a load more batches to come out. So, hold on to your hats. And then we have the evacuations in floods. This is on the front cover of the Telegraph, the picture there of the car in the floods. This is caused by climate change. We're already up to our 8th named storm of the year, 8th named by us. We've also had, I think it was Storm Pia, was it? That was named by the Norwegian Weather Service, or Danish or Swedish or something. So yeah, we're getting a lot of storms. We used to get one storm a decade. Now we're getting one storm every week. That's because of climate change and what the Tories have done about it. They've banned onshore wind farms and given contracts to oil petrochemical companies to drill for more oil in the North Sea that we don't even need, that we don't even want, that we're not even going to benefit from one dirty penny. Well, obviously Rishi Sunak will, and so will Infosys, who recently signed a $1.5 billion deal with BP. I'm sure that had nothing to do with the granting of those licenses to drill in the North Sea. Labour will fight fire with fire. Starmer warns Tories there. This is the warning on campaign tactics as he plans polls later in the year. And then no tax cuts for 2 years under Starmer, hints Labour. Hints Labour. No tax cuts for 2 years under Labour, hints Starmer. And the Independent has disappeared. Oh, well, never mind. And the Financial Times, they're leading with Sunak signals election will be held in second half of this year. So, yeah, there you go. Quick bit of a roundup there of the newspapers. I like that site, tomorrowspapers.co.uk. It's really good because it doesn't have the sun. The sun's it's never on there. I'm assuming that the people who run it are scouts, or at least sensible enough not to put the sun on there, because it would just enrage me every day. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying your chat here about your terrible experiences on the Trans-Pennine Express. I used to go TPE from Newcastle to Manchester, and my God, they're bloody woeful. First class is actually a joke. Yeah, imagine paying to go in first class and there's no toilet. Like, literally, there's nowhere to go and pee on the train. We had it once where I had to convince the train conductor to stop in Huddersfield so people could go to the toilet. I'm like, people are desperate to go to the toilet. We all got off the train in Huddersfield, and the toilet was closed. I had to go and get the station master to come and open the toilet so that literally dozens of people who were desperate to go for a wee since Liverpool could actually go to the toilet. Great service, guys! Why am I doing that as a passenger? As a slightly proactive passenger. Probably a more proactive passenger than most. But, I mean, why am I doing that? Why aren't the walkie-talkies going? The toilets aren't working. We're going to have to stop in Huddersfield and let everyone out. Okay, can you open the toilet to Huddersfield so they get that bloody toilet? It's all right, mate. Just give me a bucket. Just give me a bucket. I'll go in the corner. My God. I drill a hole in the floor. Like an Indian train. That'll work. Anyway. Quite a few Welsh moved to Kent to work in deep coal mines there, just inland from Dover. Very deep coal mines. Ooh, scary. I think I'd get a lot of claustrophobia if I had to do that job. Nick says, you could be right there, but I understand Labour's position, especially as they're so far ahead in the polls. Why rock the boat? Well, exactly. Some people say that now's the time for Labour to do outrageous things because they're so far ahead in the polls, and I think that the more sensible option is just to not rock the boat. It's just get in power. Just get in power, and then we here on Labour Social and everyone watching, just generally people who supported Labour or voted Labour, we can hold them to it. Don't forget, you watch these shows and you comment. You can't decide what we do on this channel. It's like when you have like I'm not trying to compare myself to an actual pop star, but when you have a pop star who puts out an album that some of the fans don't like, or when you're making episodes of Doctor Who and the Whovians don't like what you've done, they feel like Star Wars is actually probably the best example of this. They feel like as a fan, you have some say over what happens in the franchise, right? You know, if it takes a wrong direction, you feel personally affronted, and I get that. But it'll be more than that with Labour when they get in, because you are going to have millions of people, 13 million people, who have not just got a vested interest in Labour doing the right thing, but also they helped Labour get elected. You know, those awful Star Wars prequels would exist whether the fandom wanted them to or not. You know, the fandom didn't vote for those prequels. Whereas, you know, with Labour getting in, it will be our votes that enable them to take power and to be able to drive through what we want, you know, and to be able to drive through what they want to do. And we have to make sure that it's also what we want them to do as well, because they're our party. Whether you remember or not, if you voted for them, I think you should have some say in their direction. So anyway, yes, Solo was good and was persecuted because of KK. Solo, didn't think much of Solo. I liked Andor. Andor's the best thing since Empire Strikes Back. But we'll talk about this another time. Maybe at 1 o'clock today, when I'll be back with the agenda with Phil Morehouse. So please join me for that. And also, we'll be back at 9 o'clock tonight for the Labour Social, the first one of the year. We'll be kicking back, having a couple of beers, talking bollocks. You know the score. So please join us for that. You're very welcome to join us in the chat. And, you know, decide which way the conversation goes. You see, you have some power here. It's not just me dictating things from up high. And if you want to take us, derail us into a completely different direction where we start talking about Star Wars or video games, that's completely up to you. So thanks very much for watching. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.